Yo, it's your boy Check It with Rex, man, where we discuss any and everything. We back with another episode, feel me? But before we get into that, man, let's go ahead and talk about the topic, right? The topic of the day is isolation. And, I want to start off by asking, I smell some, hold on, y'all. Oh, snap, it's burning. Oh, yeah, it's my first segment of the podcast. It's the burning question of the day. It's the burning question of the day. You feel me? I got y'all. But nah, the burning question of the day is, have y'all ever been in a season of isolation? And if so, how did you navigate through that? Did you look at that season of isolation from a bad perspective, from a lonely and dark place? Or did you look at that place of isolation as a place of growth and a place of building? Now, this is the moment where I give you as the audience, the time to reflect on the question and relate it back to your life. Because again, this is a podcast of peace, interaction, and collectiveness, where we reflect, but we don't deflect. And we inflate, but we don't deflate. You feel me? So that's what we do on this podcast. So I'm going to give y'all that time to reflect on the question, and I'm going to let the music play. So I'm giving y'all time to reflect, and I want to know, I'm curious, what's your perspective on living in a season of isolation? Did you look at your season as a bad thing or a good thing? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, y'all know I like to hop into fun and put my 2 cents in the coin slot, you feel me? The bank of collective reflection, where I give y'all my story in context to the question, right? Have I ever been in a season of isolation? Most definitely. Majority of my life I've been in seasons of isolation. One I can remember in particular is when I was in grad school. This was in the year of 2024, right before I graduated. And I just remember feeling so overwhelmed and just so miserable in that season. And again, I didn't look at it from a positive perspective. I was looking at it from a lonely and dark place. And I think that was my issue. But the thing is, what I found and what I realized is that I did a lot of good things within that season of isolation, but I wasn't focused on it. I was so hyper focused on the negative, I couldn't focus on the positive. And that's the thing. A lot of times when we're in a season of isolation, we tend to focus on the negative, or we tend to look at it from a negative perspective. And I was looking at it from a negative perspective because I kept letting outside forces get to me. I felt like I didn't really have that many close friends. I was trying to find my wife at the time, just thinking, I'm 23, 24, trying to find my person, trying to fill a void. And I wasn't really close with a lot of friends. Then again, like I had family within the area and I didn't feel like I was as close to them as I wanted to be. And so a lot of those things kind of put me in a dark space, right? Put me in a space of loneliness instead of trying to find communities where I felt safe. I really was staying in the house a lot instead of trying to get out more and go see what's there to do in the city. And just to add a little bit of further context to my own personal story, right? When I was younger, I was also in a season of isolation. I was going through a lot, man. I was experiencing racism because I grew up in an area that wasn't predominantly black. I grew up in an area where it was pretty prejudiced. One thing I can say is that I overcame my seasons of isolation. And for one, because God is on my side. And then again, my parents, right? My family. So I wasn't in total isolation to a certain extent. But most people really weren't rocking with your boy. You feel me? One key thing that I really want people to focus on is that you have the power to change your world just by changing your own perspective. Now I'm going to say that one more time. You have the power to change your own world just by changing your perspective. Because isolation can really have a beautiful presence. I think about all the writers and the inventors that have created beautiful things that affect our society in a positive way, and they've done it in their seasons of isolation. One example I can give you is James Baldwin. He is one of the best writers of all time. James Baldwin is a phenomenal writer. And It's funny because he talks about in his stories, right, and some of his writings, how he felt so isolated as a child, right? And again, not only just by the people around him didn't really understand him, but he also felt isolated from society because of systemic racism, segregation, right? Living in that Jim Crow era in the 1920s. And it was so bad that he needed to get away. And that's how he began to write his critical works, right? He escaped all the way to France. And that was a season of isolation, right? And while he was in his season of isolation, writing these phenomenal pieces, he did it to escape racism in America, right? Again, he felt isolated, but he created something out of his season of isolation. He made writings like Go Tell It on the Mountain, In Giovanni's Room, right? And he did this all in solitude. And he really wanted to gain clarity on race, right? Love, and just all these brilliant topics and ideas. He did this all in isolation because isolation can have a beautiful presence. Another example I want to give you all is an inventor by the name Marie Van Britten Brown. She invented the first home security system in 1966 to address personal safety concerns as she was living in Queens, New York at the time, right? She was working late night shifts as a nurse and she wanted to feel safe. And in her season of isolation, she built something that affects our society today, right? If you go into a home, most people have an alarm system. It's important, right? It makes you feel safe. Her season of isolation in her own apartment, she built the first home security system. So don't look at your season of isolation as painful. Look at it as a way to build and grow, right? People don't realize that you can really do some incredible things when you're in a season of isolation. So now let's bring it back to me. Let's bring the question back to me and let me give you all further context. So one example I want to give you all from my personal experience is currently I'm in a season where I don't get out as much, and I've just been focusing on building my own legacy, building something that I can be proud of. I'm doing this podcast, I'm doing my filmmaking, I got my clothing line, Lucid Mix, you feel me? I'm not really dating. I really just been focusing and building for myself. Like I told you all in my first episode, Overcoming Monsters of Stress and Anxiety, I discussed how I'm currently in my season of isolation. So again, I'm kind of isolated right now. I'm recording this in my room, and right now I'm at peace though, right? Sometimes you have to be content. You have to be content with your situation and feel like, you know what? What can I do while I'm in the season of isolation? Now this leads me into my next segment, my favorite segment, Lucid Madness, you feel me? In this what if scenario, I want to do things a little bit differently, right? I want you all to answer this in the comments, similar to the burning question of the day, right? I really want to get y'all perspective on this. So look, here we go. I want you all to imagine, just for a second, right? Imagine some billionaire came up to you and said, hey, I'll pay you $500,000 if you live in this dull little room for 30 days. But here's the catch. You can have whatever you want within that room, but you can't leave that room for 30 days. Would you be able to do it, right? Would you make the most out of that time and do something that could change your life forever, that could potentially make you double that 500K? Would you use your time wisely? Again, it's all about perspective. Now I want to go back to the part where I said the dull room, right? I specified dull for a reason. Now I want to know what y'all's perspective on that, right? Say you're living in this dull room, right? This dull little room for 30 days. You're going, when you walk in the room, right? What would you do? Would you brighten up that room, paint it with bright blue skies, right? Use your imagination. Maybe have spaceships on the walls, if you like space. Just brightening up the room in whatever way, making it feel like home for the next 30 days. Again, perspective. Would you take those winnings, that 500K, and invest it into a business you created while you were in that room? Because you're in your season of what? Isolation. This is what I mean by isolation can have a beautiful presence. Now I want to pivot to the last segment of the podcast, concrete thinking. This is where we discuss what we've learned from the episode. So I've given you all the materials to make concrete, to be concrete in our thinking. I've given you the water, the sand, the gravel,
And so now we're going to take these materials, mix them together, and now we've become concrete in our thinking from what we've learned throughout the episode.
So I want to recap, right? We talked about how isolation can be viewed from multiple perspectives, either a good or bad perspective. And we also talked about how isolation can have a very beautiful presence. Your presence is loud and it's visible. You're not invisible. And that's what I want people to understand. If you feel like you're invisible, people, let your invisibility be your superpower. I want to encourage you all to look at your season of isolation from a positive perspective. A lot of people think when you're isolated from society or people, you're lonely. But when you're alone, think of it like a lighthouse. A lighthouse sits on the beach alone, but it shines bright and it's unique and it stands firm and tall. And that's how you have to be in your season of isolation, right? Because God puts a light in all of us. And here's the thing. He's waiting for you to let your light shine. And sometimes God puts us in certain seasons and he wants to test us. And you might not even realize that your test is in your season of isolation. So I encourage you to look at it from a positive perspective rather than a negative perspective, right? Because again, he puts a lighthouse in all of us. You are the lighthouse. You are that foundation that can stand tall and you can shine even alone. Alone doesn't mean you have to be in a dark place. A lighthouse is concrete and is rooted in the ground and it shines so bright everyone sees it. And that's how you got to be. You can have a season, you can make your season of isolation your season of growth. And here's how you can do that, by just looking at it from a positive perspective. That is how you have to be, right? Be you so rooted and so firm and sure of yourself, right? That you don't let that distract you from going into a dark place, right? I always joke around with my mom, I always be like, yeah, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, right? Don't be like Alice and Peter going down a rabbit hole, in that season of isolation. If you think of yourself as a lighthouse, you'll always be able to grow mentally and you'll always be able to stay in that place of light, right? We're trying to get away from that place of darkness. Be that lighthouse. Be so rooted, be so firm in who you are and what your goals and ambitions and dreams are, that you are that light that shines the beach. You are that light that shines the roadway. You are that light that shines bright, because that is what God wants for us. He wants that for us. So in your season of isolation, be that lighthouse, because isolation has a beautiful presence. It's unique and it's rare. When I think of lighthouse, I think of the stripes on the lighthouse and how unique it looks, right? Every lighthouse is different. Everyone has their own uniqueness. My lighthouse probably looks like my clothing line colors. You feel me? It probably got purple and orange on that. I'm just being funny, but for real, that's the thing. Like, be so rooted in positivity that in your season of isolation, you grow, you build. Just be unique, be yourself, be rare. There's a difference between being lonely and alone. When you're alone, that season of isolation could be building, could be growth. When you're lonely, that's when you get depressed and those monsters of stress and anxiety begin to kick in. Be in a space where you can be calm, you can be at peace, and you can build, you can grow from an emotional and intellectual standpoint. I just want to say I thank y'all for listening to me again for another episode, man. I got more coming soon. I'm even thinking about switching to video, doing both video and audio for y'all. I got my newsletter, which I'll put in my socials, and I have it in the comments below. So I got my social media platforms, and I'm now buzzing on Spotify, Amazon Audible, iHeartRadio, and I'm on YouTube.
So stay tuned. I got way more coming for y'all, man. Stay encouraged, stay motivated. God bless.